Hello, this is Ham Donishman. Thanks you for joining for another session of our Verasys training videos. And today we're going to be talking about the ZEC310 controller, which is our zone controller for the changeover bypass system. Again, this is the ZEC310 controller. So I've already have logged into my Verasys demo site, and I'm going to go directly into one of my zone controllers and start from there. Again, if you look at the zone controller, or at least our device list, you will see a topology here that shows you that this is a zone coordinator, the first device itself. When you have a dark blue box here that tells me that this particular address and this zone coordinator has been connected to my system bus, and then everything that's underneath it with the lighter box, there's no color inside this box, and with the addresses, this will be all the devices that will be underneath the zone coordinator if you follow the topology, and that would be part of our zone bus. So your rooftop, your bypass damper, and then your zone dampers all will be part of that zone bus. So I'm going to pull up one of the ZEC310 controllers. This one is labeled as Claudio's office. And the first thing you're going to see is after it's plugged into the network, and as soon as you plug in a zone ZEC310 into the network, as long as your communication is good, everything will come online, and the tree structure will be there for you automatically, and it will define all these objects and then fills in the information. So basically the system is online even as the first time you come in, and you basically have to go through and make the configuration changes that you need. So the first page you'll see is the home screen, and this is the data that you'll see. You'll see the zone temperature. As long as there's no issues with the network sensor that's connected to the zone damper, you should have a valid temperature coming in. And then basically on the set point itself, that's being driven from a user itself, and then also from the network sensor that's on the wall. So when I say user itself, what that means is through the system, when you're logged into the system as I'm looking at it right now, I could come in and change the set point if I want. And I've actually driven this set point very high because I wanted to see it go into urgent heating, and that's why this thing is in urgent heat at this point. You have your damper position, the information that comes across, and this is basically is being calculated within the ZEC controller. And then you do have some other information regarding the thermal cooler adjusts and other types of objects that are being shown from a changeover bypass system. The set point screen, this is where you have some defaults already created for you. I did drove, just I was saying a little while ago, drove that very high because I wanted to see it go into heating based on the last video I did. So I'm going to go ahead and drive that back down. And typically you want to default, I believe, is at 68, and then your cooling is right around, let's say, 72, and I will save that as well. So I've changed the set points, so you have unoccupied cooling and heating set point, and then this is where you actually change your warm or cooler adjust range, and this is the knob that's on the network sensor itself, or you're adjusting or your amount of adjustment you're allowing the user to do at the network sensor itself. You have what's called a commissioning tab, and this tab gives you the information you need at the zone damper itself, and this is based on the schedule you get for that particular job, or even have a retrofit job. You have to know this information, and then how you want to drive the position of the damper. I mean, in this case, we left the defaults. You may want to change those based on the load that you have, based on the situation in the room. All these positions can be changed. You could drive it to 0% if you want, to 30%, and whatever the situation is for that particular commissioning of that zone. You have some parameters around demand control ventilation. If you are using that, this is where you make your adjustment. And then from a load shed perspective, this is the functionality around load shed. This is where you would make those changes as necessary for the zone itself. The controller setup or control setup, this is where you come in and make your zone coordinator enable or disable from a functionality perspective. If there's a power fail, you want to restart an enable position. This is where you could actually disable the warmer cooler adjuster at the network sensor. If you do have domain control ventilation, this is where you actually come in and make your changes based on CO2, or if you have no CO2 connected to the zone coordinator itself. Temporary occupancy, again, you can enable disable here. This is where you gave a zone weight to that particular zone, and you have a zone weight between 0 to 3. 0 obviously means that you have no weight consideration at all. If you go as high as 3, that means this zone is very important, and you want to make sure that it takes a higher priority than any other zone within the system. Typically that's defaulted to 1, and then most of the zones are actually defaulted to 1 as well. This is a changeover bypass system, and if you want a zone that not to vote at all based on whatever the condition of space is, you could actually come in here and tell it false, so this zone will have no voting allocation to the changeover bypass system. You have a lockout timer, you have occupancy mode if it's a schedule, or if it's no schedule, you could have external, you could have that set up right here. And then you have what we call auto tuning enabled. This is our algorithm that we use inside the controller itself that continuously self-tuning itself, and so this is something you could enable, which in most cases we default to enable, but if you want to disable this algorithm, you can do that. And if you want to reset any of our PID tuning algorithm, you could come in here and do that as well. The equipment setup, again, is pretty straightforward. This is where you come in and tell your stroke time, depending on, again, what your actual damper stroke time is. If you need to change the polarity of the actuators, especially when you're doing a retrofit, or if you're going into the different types of boxes we have out there, this is where you make your change from a clockwise to counterclockwise. If you refer to our documentation, we have a list of all the different manufacturers, and we giving you that information up front, what the polarity should be. If there's supplemental heating for the ZEC controller, this is where you tell it, hey, I have supplemental heating, so based on the wiring diagram that's provided in the installation diagram documentation, this is where you tell it, go true, so that the output is energized, or at least will be energized based on the sequence that it's running within the ZEC controller. And then we also have the zone temperature sensor offset. There are conditions that you may have at 1 or 2 degrees, maybe not 2, but maybe at 1 degree, half a degree type of offset you want to insert inside the zone temperature sensor. As far as the controller itself, this is your typical, there's nothing to change here, but it just tells you what the address is, what the firmware revision is, and what the unit model number here is, which is the ZEC310. We also have a trend functionality, so every zone controller, ZEC310, comes with 3 predefined trends. So if you do have an indoor air quality sensor, it will, and if you got it hooked up to the system, or to the control, you will see the trend. All these trends are predefined 15-minute cycle time, every 15-minute interval, and it automatically starts running as soon as you power up the system. So if I pull up the zone temperature itself, you should see a trend, and it will graph it out for you. And in this case, as you can see, when I was unoccupied versus occupied, this is actually when I change it from we went from SI to IP, that's why it drops way down. This is not really my occupancy. So if I go and review, we'll zoom in closer, you can see what the temperature was doing in this space. And again, this is a demo site, so a lot of this numbers are not true space temperatures here. So this should really this concludes my ZEC310 video. Probably took a little longer than I expected, but hopefully this helped. And I'm hoping that you come back with additional videos that we will have on our verasyscontrols.com. Thank you for joining.